being able to play a role in bringing communities together, creating that sense of place, and bringing people joy, it's pretty special.
Welcome back to The Deal. I'm Jason Kelly alongside Alex Rodriguez. So excited to have with us Catie Griggs. She's the president of business operations for the Baltimore Orioles. Someone we've been circling around because we have a lot of friends in your organization, Catie, but we wanted to talk to the boss, the person who actually runs this ship day to day. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's start with the state of baseball. How would you characterize it? You've been in baseball for some time now. What's the business of baseball here in 2025 in a few words?
I think the business of baseball is strong. We still play a really unique role in the sports ecosystem. We have a lot of games, and I think it's one of the things that makes us special. We have the opportunity to bring people together and create those spaces where people are coming together over shared passions versus perhaps being in situations where they either don't interact or are torn apart by differences. And I think that you need more of those spaces. And we're seeing fans going and spending time at ballparks. Attendance remains strong, TV viewership remains strong. And I do think that the introduction of the pitch clock and shortening the game time is something that does have a role to play in that.
And I'm glad you went to the sort of the rule changes and what we've seen over the last couple of years. How do you see it from a business perspective? Like, how did it play through to either, fan engagement, fans in seats, merch, concessions? Like, did you see a real change as these rules sort of came in to the top line and bottom line of your business?
Well, I think there's a lot of questions leading up to it about what was that impact going to be. My guiding light has been and remains that if you do the right thing for your fans, it's good for your business. I think that holds true in this case. We've heard for a long time that the game was long, and we know that we're in a world of shortened attention spans. We talk a lot about share of watch versus share of wallet.
Mm.
And the reality is, this isn't something that's brand new. This is simply taking game times back to what they were a decade or two ago. So it's not changing the game. It's not fundamentally altering it. And I think what you saw last year in year one was economics were pretty similar in terms of those in-game economics. Some teams saw growth, some teams saw minor decreases. That's something that's pretty common year over year and didn't seem to be materially impacted by it. But again, we've seen strong attendance in the league. We've seen strong viewership in the league over the last few years, and I think, it's certainly not too difficult to surmise that that's a part of it.
So, Katie, when you zoom out and you look at the four major sports in American sports, right? That's MLB, NBA, NFL, NHL. NHL has had the best growth the last 4 or 5 years. NBA and NFL have been pretty similar, both high double digits. NHL over 20%, but baseball is mid single digits. What do you attribute this to? And the word on the street is that the best buy right now from the four major sports is baseball, and the multiples are quite attractive. How do you make baseball more attractive from an enterprise point of view? And where's the growth in baseball?
I think the growth in baseball is recognizing what's always been there and making sure we're creating environments where all fans feel not only welcome but wanted. When you look at the diversity of our athletes on the field, it's no secret it's changed over time. When you look at the ways in which teams have shifted from more urban center ballpark locations out to suburbs, that does carry with it. It's more difficult to get there. You have less public transit. And I think the reality is when you have 162 games each season, it's incumbent upon us to create 162 opportunities, or at least 81 at home, and hopefully more, to attract fans and create a spot where everyone feels welcome. And so, as someone who has the privilege of working for a club in a really diverse city, I don't know that historically we can look ourselves in the eye and say we've done all that we could or should to make sure that everyone feels welcome, everyone feels wanted, and we've created a space that really does serve the needs of our entire community.
And Katie, a follow up on that, like if you were to be a commissioner for one day, is there two or three things you would try to implement? And by the way, Rob Manfred, who's the commissioner now, has done a fantastic job. As you mentioned, some of the rules already changed, but how would you add to that?
I think, look, there are a lot of really great things that are already underway. And so, from my standpoint, I think we are moving in the right direction. One of the things that I know that there's been an emphasis on that I would continue building on is the connection that fans have to athletes, the increased focus on storytelling, not only about the incredible athletic feats that are happening on the field of play every single day and every single evening, but also about who these athletes are. I mean, we have incredible men playing the sport throughout the league, throughout each and every team, and the more that we focus on solely their athletic exploits, not all of us can be big league players, most of us can't, but we can all relate to the characteristics that each and every one of these people brings to the sport, to the game, and to themselves. And I think helping people find those connections, helping people see themselves in these athletes, whether it's someone where it reminds me of my brother, he reminds me of my uncle, he reminds me of a buddy of mine, the more effectively we're able to showcase the players themselves, which is something that I would argue the NBA in particular has done a very good job at, I think the more successful we'll be.
Does it feel like the players are up for that? I would imagine that players would look at the baseball players would look at the NBA and be like, "Yeah, those guys are making more money off the court because of all of those things." How much convincing do you have to do as a smart business person to these players who presumably are increasingly smart business people in their own right?
Yeah, I think there'd be tremendous hubris in putting myself inside the head of a professional big league player. So I might turn that one into Alex. But, from my standpoint, we are at a phase where when you look at the age of a lot of the players of the game, like this is the social media generation. This is a generation that grew up with the internet and social media being part of their everyday lives and telling their stories and how they connect to their friends and each other. So I think from a willingness and an understanding and an appetite, it's there. The question is and always remains in a sport like baseball, when there are so many games and so many demands placed upon these athletes, how do you do this in a way that's organic? How do you do this in a way that's authentic? And how do you do this in a way that is meaningful and natural and comfortable for each one of them? And building that system where they know they're set up for success here, right? This is something, there isn't that gotcha moment. This is about how do we celebrate them as people, and every single person is unique. But I'd be curious on Alex's thoughts on it.
Yeah, Alex, what do you think? Is it starting to resonate?
I think so, and the numbers suggest so as well. I mean, baseball's had a 24-month run here that is as good as I've seen in quite a long time. I think it's an interesting thing about narrative, right? I mean, we always thought when I came in 1994 that baseball was the most attractive sport for TV because we had so much content. And we grew up in an era where they said more content's better. Somehow they flipped that on its head and are saying they're holding that against us, right? Because it's not as scarce. But I don't see it that way. I think we have to be able to turn that narrative like the Titanic and say we have a better offering because we can be on 162 games, which is like a soap opera at home every night. So I think that there's some work to do there. I also think there's some low hanging fruit. I mean, if you think about Thanksgiving this year, you have the Dallas Cowboys going up against Kansas City in the second slot on CBS. And I heard Jim Nance talking about it, that he thinks is going to be the largest TV audience ever for a regular season game. So how do we take July 4th as the American Day and take America's pastime and have both Fox and ESPN, the media partners, on location and have the best four games from the time that is 12 to midnight? And it should be all baseball every day. I don't want to see the hot dogs. The hot dogs are great on ESPN, but it should be America's pastime. And then I think to Katie's point, you've never had better young players than you have today in since I've been around the game and for the last 30 or 40 years. And, how do we take the helmet off of the Gunnar Hendersons, the Aaron Judge, the Otanis? But then there's a second layers of that, right? Then who's the next Bryce Harper? And a lot of them play on Katie's team, the Baltimore Orioles. So I think we have to be able to do a better job of storytelling. Whether is that some reality TV where we follow them around in the off season to find out who they are, so we can be invested. Especially like my mom and my sister, they care more about what their puppy's name is the wife pregnant, family things. They want to know the person, not just the stats. And I think we can appeal to women a lot better than we are right now.
Yeah, it's interesting, Katie. I mean, to think about your franchise in particular, I came along at a time, and I've been a baseball fan all my life. You and I shared a little common history as Southerners, and I know you worked in Atlanta for a time for the soccer club down there, I believe. I've been a Braves fan all my life. We could talk about the Braves. It's painful. But, one of the greatest storylines in the history of baseball was Cal Ripken. Cal Ripken Jr. I mean, an unbelievable thing. Now, he's obviously, I know he's, back more involved with the club. He's a minority owner. I've spent some time with him. I know he's a hero of Alex's. How do you marry this, kind of youth movement and all the stuff we're talking about with this like rich heritage you have as a club?
I think that's a huge strength and an asset. So, to your point on Cal, we had the opportunity to celebrate him recently in the 30th anniversary of his 2131 feet, which I don't know how that ever gets broken at this point.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that does make baseball so special is the true connection and tie that it has. It is that sense of tradition, it is that sense of history. Whenever I'm at a game, I'm still struck in the seventh inning. You have the seventh inning stretch, everyone in the ballpark knows the song.
Yeah.
Those moments don't happen. elsewhere, right? Different teams, different leagues, everyone has special things that make them unique. So this isn't a better than, but I do think it's something that's different than. Is we have the opportunity to celebrate the history. We have the opportunity to celebrate all of our all-time greats. You have a lot of really incredible records that many of which still stand. You still talk about the athletes who played 100 years ago as if they were stars today, and that's something you simply don't see. And so I think there's a really unique opportunity to showcase not only all of the incredible things that are happening now and will be happening in the future, but also tie them back to what makes us great, what makes this sport great, and particularly in communities. What makes these communities great? There's so many special moments using Baltimore as an example, whether they're here at Camden Yards or at Memorial Stadium, where this team means something to this community, right? And it means something to this community because it's something that you've been a part of, whether you're a young adult and you're listening to your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandparents, what have you. Like, this is a club that means something to this city. And I think being able to reflect on that history while also celebrating the present and future is a really unique strength and asset to baseball that's somewhat unique.
Katie, speaking of community and assets, one of the greatest assets that you have, in my opinion, from playing there for almost 25 years, is Camden Yards. It's truly one of the great landmarks in America, not just Baltimore area. When you think about your job in whether that's cutting expenses, adding different levers to add revenue, that will affect tremendously because you do play in the Ivy League of baseball, the American League East, and it's been there for a very long time. How do you compete against the Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees, and so on and so forth? Very tough competition. How do you think about that?
I mean, I won't speak too in depth from the baseball side because, again, I don't want to get out over my skis. But I think the reality is we compete by being ourselves. We compete by leaning into the things that make us special. We compete to leaning into the fact that we have incredible community, an amazing ballpark, and a lot of things where just the mentality ethos of this place is we're going to do it differently. Like, great, you've got the money. Great, you've got this. Great, you've got that. That's fine. We're just going to outwork you, right? We're going to show up.
Hmm.
I think Cal is the perfect example of what exemplifies Baltimore and the Baltimore ethos. I mean, he was a guy who showed up every single day, right? No off days. You come up, you show up, you work hard, and you come back again and do it again tomorrow. I think there are certain things about this team and this community that are just incredibly special and incredibly unique. And that's not to say that you don't have great things about all of the other clubs. Every club has things that make them special and unique. But I think what's going to help Baltimore win is by being Baltimore and not trying to pretend that they're the Yankees, not trying to pretend that we're the Red Sox, because we're not. And that doesn't make us weaker, it just makes us different.
So I'm glad Alex brought up Camden Yards because I remember going there, when I was going to college nearby and just being sort of blown away. It was so different back then. There are a lot of ballparks in the intervening couple decades, several decades that have copied a lot of the playbook. I know Alex is thinking a lot about this as an owner in a different league now. How do you think about the physical plant? How do you think about the area around the stadium? I know that this is something that ownership has talked about, but how do you think about the opportunities to create even more of an ecosystem around Camden Yards?
I think one of the things that makes it special that we touched on earlier is the fact that we are in the heart of the city, right? We're walking distance to the harbor. We're somewhere where there's public transit. You have the ability for different fans to get here, whether they're fans who are here in Baltimore City or fans throughout the sort of mid-Atlantic region. That I believe is a unique strength. And to your point, Camden Yards is a cathedral. Like, it is such a special ballpark, and we are so fortunate to have statewide support to actually continue to invest in it and make sure that it is as great for fans looking ahead as it has been for fans to date. So for us, it really is about doubling down on the fan experience here, making sure that we're creating spaces and experiences that resonate with different fans and recognize different people want different things at different times, and that's okay. Right? This is no longer about telling people how they should watch a baseball game. It's creating the opportunity for fans to consume a baseball game and take part of it in a way that actually makes sense for them and feels right for them. So I think inside the ballpark, we're very committed to that. We've got a lot of construction that'll be going on this offseason, the part of that project. And then looking around the ballpark, look, one of the counterpoints of a urban center ballpark is it is in the urban center. And so for us, ensuring that we're collaborating with public and private sector to make sure that this is a safe, comfortable, and part of town where our fans want to be, where our fans feel safe, where our fans feel welcome, that always is top of mind.
And so do you look at something, do you draw, I'm going back to the Braves for a second. Again, I'm my own worst enemy in this regard. Um, not talking about on the field, but talking about off the field, Alex, every time he goes down and sees Truist, he raves about the Battery and everything that they've done around there. As you look around the league and maybe tapping into your experience in Seattle, where Alex started his career, what do you see that you like? What are the things where, you call your counterpart, at another club and say, how'd you do that? Like, what are the things that you have, sort of presidential envy over?
I think there are a lot of different things. To your point, looking down in Atlanta, I had the privilege of being down there as they were building out Truist Park and the Battery. I think they did an incredible job. I think it's very different than our situation. They're at the intersection of two major highways where they had a lot of real estate because it's not in the urban core. So they had the ability to build out this really amazing environment around the ballpark that I think works great for them. I don't think that approach would necessarily be appropriate in the middle of Baltimore. But I do think that there are other teams that are doing interesting things. You've seen a lot of development around Fenway and Wrigley. You've seen a lot of development around the Cardinal Stadium and down in Colorado. So there are a number of different teams who are in more similar locations to us who have been thinking strategically and creatively about how do they make sure that the space around their ballpark is space that fans want to be. It's space that the community wants to be, not only on game days, but for all of the other days throughout the course of the year. And so it's something that as we continue to look forward, we're very much having conversation with folks. We're very much learning because ultimately our desire is to make sure that Camden Yards, the Baltimore Orioles, but more broadly, that Baltimore is a place that fans want to be and where our community members and our players want to be and where everyone feels safe and welcome, and it's a generally thriving environment. And so we think that we do play a role in that, and so we're having a lot of those conversations.
Katie, shifting a little bit, I would love your advice here and pick your brain, even though I hate that term, pick your brain. Maybe we just get your advice. You, as Jason said, I played in Seattle. You worked in Seattle, and now you're, working in Baltimore. You work for Mike Arougheti and David Rubenstein, who are, two of the giants of private equity and very respected. Mark and I, my partner, Mark Laurie, we just hired a wonderful CEO, Matthew Caldwell, who came from the Florida Panthers. And I'm wondering what's been the best cadence for you to talk to ownership? What works best for you, and what advice can you give Mark and I to maximize Matthew's talent?
I think it depends on the people and it depends on what's going on, right? In a period of significant change, in my experience, more conversations better, right? As you're trying to get to know someone and learn how you work and how he works, figuring that out and taking the time to build that relationship up front, I think pays dividends in terms of allowing both people and both parties, or in your case, all three parties, the opportunity to free up time down the road because you know how the other people are thinking about things. You know the types of things where you're going to want more information. He knows when to go to you and vice versa. So you're not sort of, yeah, that's not something I need to know, or, oh gosh, I really wish I knew about that before this went that far. So I think in that upfront period, it's important to take the time to get to know each other. And then ultimately, again, it sort of depends on what's going on in the state of the business, what's going on with sort of the extent to which this is a operate steady state versus a, hey, it's time to roll up our sleeves and make some changes. But it really does depend, in my experience, on the people and on sort of where you're at the stage of business. But given where you're at, I think communicating on a regular basis, whatever that may mean for the three of you, is probably healthy.
Alex and I have both mentioned the ownership group. It's a really interesting one, beyond, David and then Mike, and you have some some smaller stake owners like Cal Ripken Jr., David Marchik, who's a former partner and senior executive at Carlyle, worked with David there. What was the pitch that they gave you about why did you end up at Baltimore? What was appealing to you about this opportunity?
It's Camden Yards. It's Baltimore
Yeah.
Orioles. Come on. Now, look, I think, I had an incredible experience in Seattle. Seattle, the city was good to me. All of the ownership at Seattle and my team, like, there's zero complaints. It certainly is not an example of running from. But Alex noted, this is the AL East. This is Camden Yards. This is a young team that I expect to be really competitive, not just this season, but many seasons looking forward. And I enjoy being surrounded by people who are smarter than I am and push me to be my very best version of myself. And Mike Arougheti and David Rubenstein are two of the very best. And having the opportunity to work alongside and learn from them was also something that was appealing.
So, Katie, I'm curious about you go to homeschool, you start college at 14. That's insane. And then you get your master's and undergrad both from Dartmouth. I guess my question with your resume, you can literally work anywhere. Why sports?
I love what sports does for communities. I've always been interested in what makes people tick. How do you influence behavior? And I think sports is one of the very unique things where it's an intrinsic motivator, right? It has the power to move entire communities, it has the entire to bring people joy. There are so few places where you can say that, or like, again, at our best. We've had a lot of walk-offs lately, and I assure you, at the end of every single one of those, looking around the ballpark, you see a lot of happy faces. When we had the opportunity to celebrate Cal and his family on the 21-31 celebration, we had a packed ballpark and then got a walk-off on top of it, and you saw a lot of happy faces. Being able to play a role in bringing communities together, creating that sense of place, and bringing people joy, that's pretty special.
Yeah. And so, to that point about, sports within a community, one of the interesting things you did, just going back to Seattle for a second, is it felt like, and I was tipped off to this, so I sort of know why I'm asking this question. You developed really strong relationships with other ownership groups in that city, and specifically Samantha Holloway, who leads the Kraken there, and has made it clear that she wants to be an NBA owner as well. You have the Seattle Storm out there in the W as well. You guys hosted an NHL game, I believe, at T-Mobile.
That's right.
How did those sorts of deals come about? And is it about the existing relationships? Is it about reaching out to the NHL? Like, tell us that story, because I find that fascinating.
I mean, look, when you're looking at those types of events, those are league-wide events, right? So, needless to say, having the support of, in this case, the Kraken is hugely important. I don't know that it would have worked without that. Ultimately, these are league decisions where our job is to put forth, this is why you should come to our venue. This is why you should come to our city. This is why we believe it'll be great for you, your athletes, your fans, and the sport. And so for us, it's no different than many things. It's looking, understanding what someone's looking for, understanding if you can deliver it successfully and deliver it better than others, and then making that pitch. And we were very fortunate in Seattle that between the MLB All-Star Game in 2023 and the NHL Winter Classic in January of 24, New Year's Day to be specific, we had the opportunity to bring two very, very special league-wide events to the city of Seattle and put on a fantastic show both times. And so it really is about relationships are always critical, but
hmm
ultimately, it's about the work and demonstrating that this is something that is going to be best for the fan, and that's what we all hope to deliver.
And so, as you think about, sort of similar, outreach, it's a very different region that you're in now. The Pacific Northwest, it's its own thing. Baltimore, also Mid Atlantic, also its own thing. How do you leverage some of what this region that you're in now has to offer to continue to build sort of the brand of the Orioles? Obviously, a very good brand, but as you say, you're fighting for just share of attention these days.
No, I think, look, we've got a lot of tremendous assets here. Like Baltimore, one of the things that I do love about it is how accessible it is. It's not just a city that obviously is in the mid Atlantic, it's right next to DC. It's an easy train ride from Philly, it's an easy train ride from New York. We have fans who are going up to cheer on the O's when we're playing in other venues. Conversely, we have fans who are coming down to check out Camden Yards because they've heard how incredible it is. Our job is to make sure we deliver against that promise. And that's something where I mentioned we have the privilege of having state funding to help ensure that we're continuing to make this ballpark the best it possibly can be. And we're going to be working through a lot of that this off season and making sure that we're continuing to deliver against that promise. But ultimately, this is a special ballpark. This is a special team. This is a special community. And then, as Alex knows better than anyone, ultimately, what comes next is we've got to win, right? That's something that always matters. We know what fans care about. That is something that fans care about, and we need to deliver against that too.
Yeah, and fans want hope, and there's no other team that's better positioned than the Baltimore Orioles with hope, with the young players, new ownership. You, Cal Ripken. I mean, you guys are in a great place. But as you're speaking, Katie, I'm wondering, playing personally in Seattle for parts of 7 years, and Baltimore, and you talked about the assets and how easy it is to commute to other communities. When I was there, I do remember, amazing attendance. I remember merchandise sales, off the chain with Ken Griffey Jr. or Michael Jordan, and the TV ratings, you know, incredible ratings because you basically have a monopoly of the Northwest, as Jason referred. From a business point of view, where's the bigger business opportunity in Seattle that runs a very healthy business, in Baltimore that you're trying to get it to where you want it to go?
I think just on like paper, Seattle's a bigger DMA, right? And so that is just the reality. That's a statement of fact. But I don't know that that makes it better from a business opportunity standpoint. I think it has a lot of Fortune 500s who are headquartered right there. It has a, to your point, it has a tremendous history and amazing ballpark in Seattle. So I think there's a lot of really wonderful things that, you know, when I was in Seattle, we had to offer that helped us run a really strong business. I think we have a different set of circumstances here in Baltimore, but I don't think it's actually worse. It's interesting. If you look at Washington, D.C., needless to say, until 1993, that was O's territory, right? For my
Yeah.
sister in law, grew up down in Georgetown. And as a kid, her team was the O's. Again, not because the Nats aren't great, but because the Nats weren't there. And so we do have a really strong connection to this region that extends beyond simply the Baltimore DMA. But the other thing that's interesting about Baltimore is this community loves this team, right? This is a community where this team has been here, whether it's at Memorial Stadium, whether it's here at Camden Yards, for a very long time. It's part of the lifeblood of Baltimore. There's a lot of pride about being from Baltimore, and this team is associated with a lot of it. So, again, I think when you look about the strength of community, this is a community that cares about its baseball team. And so for us, it's making sure that, to your point, we're giving them reason to hope, and then we're delivering against that promise.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, you saw it with the ownership change and the types of people who came together, and that feels like a good time to mention, in full disclosure, that one of the minority owners of the Baltimore Orioles is, in fact, Mike Bloomberg, who is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg News, which obviously publishes this podcast. So, disclaimer given on that front. Katie, as we start to wrap up, I mean, one thing that also strikes me is as I look across your experience both in sports, it also includes media, and media is such a fascinating part of the baseball equation right now. Alex obviously knows it very well from a lot of different perspectives. How do you see sort of the media side evolving? Because baseball, as a lot of listeners of this podcast know, it's one of the trickiest when it comes to the big four sports in terms of sort of figuring out national versus regional and the number of games which you've talked about. How do you see that moving forward, and what are some of the decisions that need to be made to ensure that baseball gets the media sort of packaging and strategy that it needs?
Well, I know this is an area that the commissioner and the team up at MLB is spending a lot of time thinking about, but I don't think I would be speaking out of turn to say that we all know that our job is to get our content in front of many fans, current and future, as possible. And that right now there are some challenges in doing that. I think with the increasing prevalence of direct to consumer offerings from a local media standpoint, I think that does help, but it's challenging to know where the game is playing, when the game is going to be, where I should be tuning in to watch it. The easier you can make that, I think, the better. And so, from my standpoint, I think a lot of what I would hope to see as they continue to think through what those opportunities are, or what are ways in which we can start presenting our content to fans in the way in which our fans are thinking about it, which is not, I am in Baltimore, I am in the United States, or I am traveling in London. It's, I love the O's and I want to watch my team. What is the easiest way for me to do that? So I think there's an opportunity to start moving in that direction. I'm hopeful that we'll do so, but it is a very complicated environment, and it's also one that's hugely important to the health and well-being of our league, both where we are now and going forward. So it's no simple task.
Yeah, and presume I would imagine, you worked at Turner Broadcasting, and that was a sort of revolutionary. I mean, Ted Turner, again, having grown up in Atlanta, I watched all that, right in front of my eyes. I saw the power that TBS had for making, the Braves America's team back in the day. Now we're dealing in a streaming world. It must make it that much more challenging, to your point of like even finding the games, but also knowing where to put them so that people can see them. Is that fair?
I mean, I think, look, it is a challenge. Like it's the beauty of choice is also the challenge. It gets much more complicated, and you have to pay a little bit more attention. And so, there are a lot of opportunities for all of us. I think, again, our focus here at the Orioles is how do we ensure that we're getting as many of our games as possible in front of as many of our fans as possible, and that's something
Yeah.
that is our North Star. Needless to say, we can only control what we have from a local rights standpoint, but I know that Major League Baseball is also dedicated to the same premise, looking at it more nationally and internationally. So, again, it's complicated. It is certainly not something that I want to brush over and make look like an easy challenge to be fixed. But I'm really hopeful. There are a lot of really smart folks in New York. There are a lot of really smart folks at the clubs. And I'm really hopeful that between all of us, we can come up with something that continues to be as good for fans going forward as it has been previously.
All right, let's do the lightning round real quick. It's 5 questions, Catie. We're going to bounce it back and forth. First thing that comes to your mind, and we'll just quick. All right, I'll start and then Alex will pick up. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received on deal making or business?
Be honest.
Who's your dream deal-making partner?
Ooh. Someone who looks at things totally differently than I do. So
Good
depend on the
answer.
deal.
All right, so this is the dumbest question we could probably ask you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Which team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
The Baltimore Orioles.
There you go. Good. If you I guess we have to ask you because if you didn't say the Orioles, then that would be a whole different podcast.
This has been a
probably.
great conversation. I will never speak with you again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, David Rubenstein's calling right now.
And I'm looking for a new job. Headhunter, anyone?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
What's your hype song before a big meeting or negotiation?
Ooh, for a long time, as Jason mentioned, I was down in Georgia for a long time. So it was Devil Went Down to Georgia. Now I've got a variety that, depending on the mood, gets me in the right mood. So I have a 9-year-old son at home. He is my personal DJ. So it's whatever James would pick. We'll go with that.
There you go. All right. What's your advice for someone listening who wants a career like yours?
Don't get in your own way, right? Work hard, be kind, build relationships. You never know the person who's going to be able to open a door. Also, you never know the person will be able to keep it closed. So if you care about something, go at it, have the conversations, be willing to work hard, and when an opportunity shows up, be willing to lean in.
Great answer. Catie Griggs, what a pleasure. We've really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit. Thank you for being so generous with your time and your insights, and just excited to see what you do down there in Baltimore.
Sincerely appreciate it. It was wonderful speaking with you both.
Thank you, Catie.